All right, everybody out there in Radio Land. We are now joined by Cathryn Bailey, president of the WMU chapter of the American Association of University Professors. Cathryn, how are you doing on this bit of a sunny, warm day out there?
Well, the good news is I'm actually from a little farther south than most people up here, and I thrive in the heat. So I do worry a little bit about other people who are not from warmer places, but I'm a little bit like a lizard. So I love it. It energizes me in a certain way. So I'm good.
All right, fantastic. So I don't have a ton of questions lined up for us, but this is something that we've been talking about on the show with some regularity, which is the situation going on with the contract negotiations with you in the union and the university. So, this being it's kind of a high profile day with Bronco Bash going on. If you could maybe tell the listeners a little bit of kind of the story of how these negotiations have been progressing over the summer, some of the notable stumbling blocks and maybe things that you found out. I know I walked in the studio today. I saw one of your leaflets talking about anti-union lawyers hired by the university. So a lot to unpack, but I think I'm just going to let you kind of take the microphone and lead our listeners through the experience of the union coming up into the fall semester.
All right. Thanks so much. And first, really just thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I've never been in this particular space before, and it's really impressive. So wonderful. So it is a little bit of a complicated story, and it has really two parts to it. I'm going to do the way I think some of my favorite novelists do it. I'm going to start with the where we're at today. And that is that at 3 o'clock today, we have a pretty big rally planned. This is somewhat spontaneous. We actually didn't want to do this for lots of reasons. We mostly would just like to get out and shake hands with our students and welcome them to campus. But what had turned into just a feel-good event has now transformed into, I think, what you'd have to call more of a protest event. So at 3 o'clock today, we expect a number of our members and allies to be meeting at the Sanguine Hall lobby. We've got our signs with us, we've got cold drinks, and we've got our chants prepared. We actually intend to make our way over to the administration building today. This is an action that we haven't taken for, I don't know, maybe 15 years, something like this. And I will also just start out by telling you that I'm an experienced professor. That's a nice way of saying I'm old-ish. I've been doing this work for over 30 years. I've been a professor and I've never seen anything like this. Not at any campus I've been on have I ever seen professors and other core university staff so willing to take risks and urging me on. And just to give you an idea of how this is going, I went to a grocery store yesterday and somebody I didn't know yelled at me, strike, strike, right? So that's where we're at. And that was a professor, a mild-mannered professor. And I want you to think for just a minute about what it takes to get a professor to be at the end of their tether to the extent that they would want to strike. As a rule, professor, it's the last thing we want to do. It tends to be disruptive to our students, and that is almost always the last thing we want. So again, that tells you something about the fact that where we're at now is not just about negotiations for this summer, but it's part of a much longer story at Western where we have this history of disinvestment in the academic mission. And when I say disinvestment in the academic mission, I sometimes also say the core mission that Western has been cutting away, hacking away year after year after year at the kinds of services and activities that really are important to students. And that includes investment in faculty. So, for example, a student's ability to work one-on-one with do research with a faculty member depends on us having a sufficient number of faculty and faculty who are not so overworked that they can perform that labor. And again, that's just one tiny example of the way that a disinvestment in the faculty negatively impacts our students. And I want to be clear about this because one thing that's been coming out of Ed Montgomery's administration is a suggestion that Western Michigan University professors are greedy and that this is really just about us wanting more money. You know, those sometimes they will say, and I know this because I was briefly an administrator, those lazy professors, those entitled professors. We hear a lot of that kind of talk. And again, that's one of the first tricks that they come up with at times like this when we stand up and we actually demand something close to a reasonable raise. So Part of the story is a long story that's been going on for as long as I've been at Western, which has been since 2008, which is that every year they tell us they're too poor. Maybe next year they'll have some money to reinvest in the faculty, to reinvest in advisors, to reinvest even in landscape crews, custodians, the people who make Western work. Maybe next year, maybe next year. And at some point, even if you're a dum-dum, which we are not, as it turns out, but even if you were a dum-dum, at some point you catch on, right? And what you start realizing is that, oh, wait a minute, next year is never going to come. Tomorrow's never going to come. They're always going to have another reason why they cannot get it together to invest again in the core people and services that make Western work. And the reason that our many working class students and their families choose Western in the first place. Now, that would actually be bad enough, I guess, but it's compounded by the fact that at the same time that they're not investing in the academic core mission, right? At the same time they're telling us they're too poor to do that, they're spending ungodly amounts of money on other things, right? So just to take a couple of examples, one of them is, and this is a sort of, I say, a giant elephant in the room. It's the kind of thing we're not actually supposed to talk about, right? But that the president himself makes upwards $600,000 a year in compensation, right? And I want you to keep in mind there that this is someone whose house is paid for, whose telephone is paid for, whose car is paid for, whose travel is paid for, whose entire life is paid for. And then I want you to just imagine that you got $600,000 a year of mad money just to do whatever you want it with, right? So that's the kind of situation we're talking about, right? Other things that Western is willing to spend money on: corporate consulting firms. So millions of dollars on corporate consulting firms. Often these are firms that have no knowledge of what academic life is like, of what universities are like. They're corporate consulting firms. And often they're performing functions that we actually have faculty specialists who are qualified to do, right? This is insulting at so many levels, right? When Western goes out and does some of its marketing things or some of its other kind of enrollment kinds of things, when we have people here, again, who are fully qualified to do that, right? Apparently, our administration thinks they're good enough to teach our students, but they're not good enough to help guide our university, right? Another example, Division I football. So one of the things that distinguishes Western Michigan University, that sets it apart from other schools, is its willingness to dump extraordinary amounts of money into subsidizing Division I football. And what I mean there is that at a school like Western, Division I football is really kind of difficult. We don't actually have an institution that's able to support that in the way, say, that perhaps University of Michigan is, let's say, right, which is up the road. And we have a lot of University of Michigan fans in town, whatnot. So we're not a school where it makes it easy to do that. And so what you end up having to do is to, again, you have to shore it up, dump in more and more money. We have a graph of that on our website. And it's really just, it's very impressive. That's the neutral word I'm using here, to see. It's almost as if Western has become so addicted to Division I football that there's no end to the amount of money they're willing to pour into it year after year. I mean, it has grown in just this extraordinary amounts. So that's another example. And another example is union busting law firm. So universities actually they have to use attorneys. I'll just say that it's responsible for them to do so. It's and Western has always used attorneys. Like, again, it's a way you have to do it to some degree to protect the institutional interests. But a few years ago, Western hired up a union busting law firm with, again, a notorious reputation around the state, not just at Western, but an attorney who goes into various universities and helps management beat up the employees, right? So this is a pretty new thing. And negotiations between my organization, the WMU AAUP, right, the professors union here at Western, have always been challenging. I mean, we've always, it's a vigorous process. It's meant to be. We get in there and we slog it out to some degree with the administration. But in the past, it has usually been the case that we had some sense that ultimately we were colleagues and ultimately we had the best interests of our students and our institution in mind. That is a thing of the past. So what we have now and have had for the past several years is President Montgomery, sending in, again, a notorious and an aggressive anti-union corporate attorney in to sit across from the employees and try to badger, to stonewall, to filibuster, to intimidate us into accepting terms that are really just unacceptable. This is a kind of new thing. We've been pointing this out for years, and the amount of money they pay on that. Let me say it this way: it's not just the professors that Western has been doing this to. I want you to think about this for just a second. They also did this to the Professional Instructors Union. Okay, so I'll just throw that to you. And I want, for some of you know that part-time instructors, and that's who I'm talking about now, they make peanuts. We pay them peanuts, and these are by and large fully credentialed professional people who bring so much to the institution. Our institution could not function without them. They're just a key part of what we do, and we pay them peanuts already. Last time they went in to negotiate, this union busting attorney at President Montgomery's behest, he works for President Montgomery. Let's be clear about this. He offered them, he told them what they were worth was a 0% raise. Okay, so that's already bad enough. That's not typical, by the way. But get this, then they did this. This is one of my favorite parts. He told them also that they would need to start paying for their parking spots. Okay, so, and mind you, this was shortly after COVID, and all we had was, our parking spots were going begging. I mean, empty parking spots everywhere. It was just another way to insult our part-time instructor and colleagues, right? And by the way, in 2021, he came to us also, that is the Western Michigan University's board-appointed faculty. He came to us and told us, you know what? Despite the extraordinary sacrifices you've made and the loss of personnel that's putting so much more work on all of you, what we think you're worth this time around is a 0% raise also. So, and I want to be clear here. This is meant to insult us. It's an insult. And that's the climate that we've got now. That's, again, the overarching story of where we're at and so what I'm kind of saying to you here is it's critical right now for us to negotiate decent raises for our members, but that's a small part of the story now. What we're now talking about is a university, a working, I would say to me, I think of Western Michigan University as a working class, research intensive university, one that's very much focused on undergraduate education, of course, also graduate education, but that really takes its Western, or that its working class roots seriously. And it's actually kind of heartbreaking to me to see where we're at, that we've now got a university administration that is so out of touch and that is hell-bent on bringing the powerhouse unions on this campus to their knees. I think it's now an intentional strategy, not just to get us to accept low salary offers, but to break the unions. And how am I not supposed to think that when they hire anti-union attorneys and come at us with things like 0% raises, or what we've got now, which at this point is almost as bad. The latest is a 2.75%, which again, given the sacrifices that have been made by the people on this campus, by the workers, it's an insult. And again, they know this. And if you could hear the descriptions, I don't go to the table myself, but if you could hear some of the descriptions of what's happening there, it's not just that they're giving us low offers, but that they want to make sure that we feel demeaned and devalued as they do it. So I want you to think about that for a minute. Again, this is not just about wages. This is about breaking the back of the union. And to that end, I want to make a point that the members of my union are, again, the board appointed professors at Western Michigan University, all right? I'm a professor, right? My colleagues are professors. But Western also understands that the terms that we negotiate have impacts on nearly every other employee group. Just to take one example, the healthcare terms that we negotiate this summer are the same terms that pretty much every benefits eligible employee on this campus will get. All right. So we negotiate them for our members. And at the same time, we're hearing from other people on campus, do well, do well, do well, because they know they're going to get those same benefits, right? So if we don't get, we have a lot of pressure on us to get it right. Okay. It's not just about selfishness. What keeps me awake at night, sure, I care about my members, but I'm aware that what they can get away with the WMU AAUP, we are a powerhouse union, one of the oldest professors unions in the nation. If they can crack us, then I know what they're doing, what they're coming for next, right? In terms of compensation, historically, the administration has used the compensation number it gives to my colleagues as the cap on what it will offer to others. So, for example, they'll say let's say, AFSCME, and that is our union on campus that includes custodians, landscape workers, dining hall workers, dining services workers, and so much more, right? So really core critical services. They'll go to them and they'll say something like, gosh, we'd like to give you more, a bigger raise, but if we did that, the WMU AAUP, the professors, they'd be pissed off, so we can't do it, right? So I want you to think about that for a minute. So they come to us, and also they have been sending out. This is I don't know that this isn't illegal. We have our attorney looking into it, but they've been sending out these emails campus wide that are trying to shame the professors and talk about how greedy we are. They're trying to divide and conquer.
Pit workers against one another.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you. That was the phrase I was looking for. And at the same time, they know that next year, when another employee groups comes up, that they're gonna use the low salary offer they gave us to justify the low one to them, right? What I'm saying is that it is true that relatively speaking, at Western, the professors are better off. That is true in terms of a lot of the terms of our employment do tend to be better. I think there's just no doubt about that. But it is also true that when our union does better, it creates conditions for all of the boats to rise. And when we don't, it will be used against everyone else, right? And I say this because we're getting this outpouring of support from multiple employee groups, and I think this is part of it. People understand, and they're wise to the tricks. After all these years, they're wise to the tricks of the administration, their attempts to divide and conquer us. But I say it again because I know sometimes there's a sense that, oh, those privileged professors or whatnot. But again, what keeps me up night isn't just the interests of my members and my colleagues. It is also the knowledge that if Western Michigan University can break the back of the WMU AAUP, then absolutely no one is safe. No one. We stand between the administration and all of the other employee groups to some degree. So I don't know. Am I on topic here, Andy?
Oh no, I mean, you kind of doing my work for me because a lot of these are going to kind of spur off of questions I was going to ask, but it's one common theme that we see, not just here at Western, but in the community broadly is, Western kind of prides itself as a progressive institution. You could say that a lot about like city of Kalamazoo as well. What is your sense of like that distance between how the university administration likes to portray itself versus how they're dealing with you and your union right
I think that's a really good point. There's the hypocrisy of the situation we're in now, I think is one of the things that's very troubling for a lot of us. And just to give you a sense of things, I myself am a first generation college student, and many of my colleagues are as well. A lot of the professors who come to Western Michigan University come here because we ourselves come from working class families, and we want to be there to support that journey for the next generation and the generation after that. And we are told, of course, a lot of us, we come here because Western markets itself that way, right? It's not the University of Michigan, right? This is a place where people have a chance, right? Where it's a not super selective on its in its enrollment, which the flip side of that is that it's a welcoming and democratic place from that point of view. You have a chance here, right? So yeah, when we get in here and we find that there's a weird social stratification between the elite administrators at this institution and just about everybody else, it's kind of sickening, right? And I'll just say something like one of the things I tell now when I'm connecting with people about this issue, I like to tell them that among the perks that Montgomery gets, the president at the university, is that he has a country club membership. And I usually ask him, I'm like, have you ever been to a country club? Because I have never been to a country club. I mean, I've seen them in like movies, but I've never actually been to one. And I'm like, it's weird to me. Like it's weird to me that he didn't want it. It's weird to me. Those kinds of things and then for that same person to basically stand across from us and tell us, gosh, we'd love to give you a bigger raise. Well, we don't have the money for it. And then they all the way to the bank. They're laughing all the way to, the money bags kind of situation of it is just sickening. And again, year after year. And when we tell them, this is a real sticking point for my colleagues. When we tell them, do you understand that the ones who are going to suffer here are going to be our students? Because the work we do is direct service to students, right? And that again, it's true for the professors, it's true for instructors, it's true for advisors, it's true for the administrative assistants, it's true for all of the AFSCME workers, again, landscapers, right, custodians or whatever. We make Western work. I will tell you something. I'm pretty sure we could get along a lot better with if we didn't have so many of these elite administrators, then if we lose any more professors or dining hall workers, right, or parking lot people or whatever. I mean, we can't not have more people who actually do the work. And from their point of view, it almost seems like there was a meme I saw recently where I can't remember what university it was talking about, but it said something like, let's just use Western here. Let's say Western Michigan University is trying to live the dream of an all administration university. No students, no faculty, just all administrators all the time, something like this. And sometimes it feels like that's what they're after. Like they really have somehow forgotten that our core mission is to serve these students that I can see here through the window, right? These students who are so excited to be here, right? Again, many of them first generation students, and their families have sacrificed them to send them here. And again, this starving the very services that they are going to need to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that kind of came to mind as we were in this discussion, and I know I won't keep you too much longer because you've got that rally coming up.
Yes, and I also have negotiation news coming in as I talk to you. So I
Oh,
apologize. I can
okay.
look at this real quick. I'm in real time in touch with our people
Oh,
at the table.
okay.
So
So, I guess I just, I want to say, just on behalf of our show, this is a story that we are going to stay on top of. And, the little bit that we can do on Tuesdays from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. If the university continues to act in this embarrassing way towards its workers, I'll at least do my part and report on it. And these things will be said on the speakers and are on the radio airwaves. Um, and it also, this is a moment for the working class in Kalamazoo. This last year, I've had more stories about workers unionizing, standing up against the poor working conditions than I've had in the other close to a decade where we've been airing this show. So I think the strength or trying to break down your union in particular, it sends a very strong message, uh and for that reason I think it's particularly important for the community to stand by y'all and what you're doing, what your demands are. So that's my question: how can student body, your fellow workers here at the university, and the Kalamazoo community more broadly, what can they do to support your union in these very volatile negotiations with the administration?
all right, and I'm going to say this, and I think this will be my last word because I'm actually in touch with our chief negotiator, and he has some time sensitive news he needs to get me. They're actually in the building right now,
Okay.
so this is wonderful. The first thing I would say, and the easiest thing, is that on our official blog we constantly post updates about where we're at and what we need. So this is www.thewmuaaup.com. Again, the WMUAAUP.com. And we are pay close attention to that. It's updated all the time. Just to give you some examples, we have, as I said, a rally planned today. We'll start in a half hour right here at Bronco Bash, meeting in Sangram Hall. And then tomorrow we've got another rally scheduled for noon near the same location. And get this is pretty exciting. We are going to have somebody do a dramatic reading of the president's latest contract. So that'll be through a bullhorn, which has its own particular charm. And then we'll also have someone sing the song, lead singing of the song "Cry Me a River." So we'll be doing that as well. If any of you are singers and you would like to do that, and I have been telling people, you don't need to be a good singer as long as you're a loud singer. If it's not clear to you why we've chosen "Cry Me a River," it's because we've been listening year after year, indeed decade after decade, to Western crying poor, violins playing year after year as we watch them spend money on things that are anything other than the core academic mission and the people who perform those tasks.
Right. I'm sorry. One last thing, and I know you got to go, but I found this interesting. Usually I'm on air till 4. I'm going to be on air till 3 today because Wider is doing its like Bronco Bash coverage. Part of that coverage is they're actually going to have Ed Montgomery in here and talk to him. So I was just curious if you could have us ask one thing of Ed Montgomery, what would it be?
Here's the question I would ask him. It's a question that was asked by one of our part-time instructor colleagues at a Board of Trustees meeting when she was pointing out the way that our part-time instructor colleagues were being treated. Frankly, can I say SIG?
Clean language,
Okay,
but other than
clean
that,
language, treated poorly at the
mhm.
negotiation table, and she was talking about how little money they make when they perform this extraordinary service for students. And what she asked President Montgomery was, President Montgomery, how do you sleep at night? That's my question for
That's a
him.
good question. All right. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very hectic day. Again, it's the WMU American Association of University Professors. We will stay on the story as it progresses, and we will link to all the relevant stuff in our show notes. Thanks again for your time, Cathryn, and solidarity to you.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. I hope I see you again soon.
Oh, yeah, same.
Okay.
Anytime, come on the
Okay.
program.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks so much. I'm
Okay.
gonna run out,
All
right?
right.
And maybe send me a link, right?
All right. I will. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
All right. Okay, everybody. We are still on air, and I think what we're going to do now, a lot of this, and well, first of all, I'm going to end this recording. You can find this online at Media Ciphers, at our podcast, our YouTube, or our Facebook page.